We do apologize for that break in transmission. Let's move to the U.S. Right now, where, of course, there are now less than 48 hours to go until the 2024 U.S. presidential elections. And that's where we find my colleague, Xoli Mngambi, who is monitoring these crucial polls from Washington, D.C. He joins us now for more on what we can expect from him a little later this evening. Xoli, it's what, less than 2 days to go before Americans make that all-important mark. Is there a palpable sense at this point that these elections are just 2 days away now?
Well, Ntantla, as you mentioned, good morning to you. It's just after 10 o'clock our time here, and I am coming to you live from Washington, D.C. It is the administrative capital. Behind me is the White House, and that's where the president and his vice president, Kamala Harris, who is the Democratic nominee, that is where they basically live in Ntantla in order to run this country. And so, as you mentioned, the 48-hour final countdown has begun, and this election is getting tighter and tighter. And I'm sure many viewers are possibly getting tired of hearing that, but one of the respected polls has come out in the last few hours suggesting that there is no clear leader, and so it looks like it is going to go down to the wire. However, talking about the two candidates, they are still battling it out in the key swing states, for example, Pennsylvania. And you would have heard a little earlier my colleague Ziani Ngobo talking about the early voting, whether in person or by mail, that may have closed in some states, but it still is very much open to other states. And so the American electoral system, very different to that of South Africa and Ntantla. For example, I will surprise you with this information. I learned that at least in 25 states, you are allowed to take a selfie with your ballot, whereas in some states, that is not allowed. So that just tells you the different electoral system they have here versus back home in South Africa. But as we mentioned, it is a very tight race. The electoral officials, very, very clear that they are going to look out for any irregularities that may arise. And top of mind is what happened back in November of 2020 when Donald Trump and his supporters claimed that the votes were being stolen in some states. And so nothing is going to be left to chance in that regard, and so they have a lot of work on their hands. But as I throw ahead, Ntantla, to what we are going to be talking about in the next hour, which will be at 6:15 your time, I want us to recall now some of the words from the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, and she has pledged in the last few hours to put the country before her party, and she is urging her supporters to make sure that they go out in their numbers to vote, because every vote is going to count. Let's take a look now as I say goodbye to you.
Kamala Harris has told the thousands of supporters who attended a rally in Charlotte, North Carolina, that the November 5th polls will be the most consequential of their lifetime. She says this election is a fight for democracy and everyone should exercise their vote.
And we have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We're done with that. We're done. We're exhausted with it.
On the issue of women's reproductive rights, Kamala Harris has pledged to protect the women of America, and keeping Donald Trump out of office will also allow her to deal with the cost of living crisis, as well as reducing tax for small businesses.
And at the top of my list is bringing down the cost of living for you. That will be my focus every single day as president. I will give a middle-class tax cut to over 100 million Americans. I will enact the first ever federal ban on corporate price gouging on groceries.
Once again, Harris has expressed her happiness and love for the Gen Z voters, those who will be voting for the first time on November 5. She says they are the future of the country and will be able to usher a new generation of leaders in the Oval Office.
So, North Carolina, I'm here to ask for your vote. I'm here to ask for your vote. And here is my pledge to you. As president, I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to the challenges you face.
Harrison called on voters, young and old, to ensure that they ask a neighbor, a friend, and a loved one to go out and vote come next Tuesday, where America will decide. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Nziobo in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the United States of America.
So Nziobo there giving us the lay of the land as far as Kamala Harris's campaign is concerned, Tantla, but looking at what Donald Trump has been saying in the last few hours, again, the messaging from him more personal as opposed to being elections issues centered, talking about Kamala, who must be addressed as just Kamala, because he says, who is Harris? We don't know who Harris is. And so his language is watched very closely here as the two candidates sort of wind down this campaign trail. And there is very much an interest, Tlantla, to look at who is going to finish stronger than the other based on their messaging, but importantly also in Tlantla, I think what the officials here as far as security is concerned, because there is also a big worry about what could happen post-election. Donald Trump has been asked a few times as to whether he is going to accept the electoral outcome, and he has so far refused to answer that very clearly. And so there is worry as to what could happen in the country. And so security, in terms of security, the country is sort of on tenterhooks. But that's how things look here for the time being. Tantla.